Good evening. You're back again with Father Russ on Street Talk. Missed you all week. Hope you missed me. Tonight, I have Father Emmett Jarrett with me from St. Francis House, and we're going to put him in the hot seat, ask him a lot of questions about what goes on over there at St. Francis House. My co-host, George Manco, is with me again. So we have Father sitting between us. As I just told him, we have a rose between two thorns here tonight, and we're going to probably give Father a hard time. We're going to try and give that other guy, he's got a haircut much like mine. I just want to say one thing, though, before we start. Next week, make sure you tune in, because we're going to have Bev Goulet on, and she's the Director of Social Services up in Norwich. Bev, I hope you're watching. I haven't sent you the directions. I've been busy this week, but she's going to talk to us about the homeless situation, what the statistics are. That's a lady who really knows what's going on here in the area, been here a long time, so that should be a good show. And so we'll start right in, and I have, like I said, I have Father Emmett here. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
And St. Francis House is an interesting thing. I believe it's an interesting situation, and it says you put out a little brochure that's you probably can't see it. I have it in my hands here, though. It says St. Francis House, who we are. And maybe, you know what?
Maybe I can get it up.
Maybe you can get it up. Oh, there we go. Right? That's good. That's good, George. So people. George doesn't want me on the TV anyway.
I have a purpose.
You do have a purpose. And it's who are you? I guess that's the question, first of all, if you can help me with that.
I'll try to do that. People are always asking us who we are. And the reason they ask is that our society shapes us in such a way is that we want to define people by the work that they do, and usually the work that they do for a living. So when you meet somebody, especially if you meet a man, what do you do? Well, what do you do? Well, I sleep, I breathe, I eat, I love my children, I do all kinds of things. What they want to know is what your job is, and after that they want to know how much money you make. So what we do is we don't make any money. I'm a retired Episcopal priest, and so I get my pension.
We can't talk to you no more.
Can't talk to me no more.
Show's over.
I get my pension from them. I get the Social Security, because I've worked a lot in the United States of America over the last 67 years. And who we are is Ann Scheibner, my wife, who grew up in this area a few years ago, and my son Nate, who's off in New Orleans now being in college. My daughter Sarah, who's working at the homeless shelter tonight.
Yeah, that's right.
16 years old and wonderful, a great artist. And Mark Auer, who's a middle-aged gent who just graduated from seminary and lost one of his lungs, and so he goes around with this oxygen thing, and he's come and joined our community. He's lived with us for the last year and a half. And we're looking for new recruits, especially young ones, and people who want to share the work. So what is it we do? Ann did a talk a couple of weeks ago to try to answer that question, and she gave 3 answers. First thing is we learn to breathe together. We learn to breathe together by praying together, and the way the traditional churches and the traditional Christian religions pray the Psalms is to say part and then have a silence and then say another part, and do that back and forth. And if you learn to breathe with somebody else, you get into a very, very intimate relationship with that person. And you can't judge people when you're breathing with them. You can't decide, well, I don't like your looks, or I don't like your background, or I don't like your beard, or I'm trying to breathe in the same way and the same time as you are. So we breathe together, which means we pray together. Second thing is we eat together. Well, eating is a very, very important thing that people do. We eat our meals together in community. We eat some of our meals together in community. We eat some meals with people who come on Friday nights to join us for clarification of thought, and we prepare the food. And when you're sharing food, it's a little bit like the Eucharist. Jesus, when he instituted the Eucharist and shared bread and wine with his brothers and sisters, they've been doing that all along. This wasn't something new. It wasn't a special religious rite. It was a continuation of the practice of eating and sharing with a community. So then the third thing that we do is we study the scriptures together. We open the Bible and we use the African method of Bible study, and we ask what it is that God wants to say to each person in this biblical text that we're reading today. And it's always a text from the gospel, because Jesus is the gospel, the radical Jesus, as I'm sure you have told your audience before.
Yes, I have. Right. You took my thunder. My questions was, I saw that at St. Francis House is a place of prayer. Okay, and I wanted to say, what does it mean? What does that mean? Service. When do you have service? Or do you have a regular service, or what time is it?
Every morning at 8 o'clock, we have the divine office, our morning prayer. We pray the Psalms, we read some scripture, we pray for other people, we sing a song. It takes about half an hour. We have some silence. And so, but the other part of the prayer is that everybody is expected, in his or her own way, to spend an hour every day in silence, an hour with the Lord. And how that is, you may do it one way. I know I get up early and then spend time in silence. Anne sleeps late and does drawings without looking at what she's drawing, because she's an artist too. Different people pray different ways. So we don't tell them how they've got to do that. What we do together is the morning prayer at 8 o'clock in the morning, and that's praying together. But other times, the goal, though...
Is anybody able to come at 8
course.
o'clock in the morning?
Anybody,
the doors are open?
The door's open.
8 to what is
8
it?
to 8:30.
8 to 8:30?
No, St. Francis House is across from California Fruit.
Across from California Fruit.
More so the parking lot of California Fruit than it is.
That's right. And Victory House next door, it's called Victory House because Christ has won the victory. I don't have to win the victory.
I tried to
It's already
vote
been
on
won.
that house.
I know.
I wanted to call it Sanctuary
I
House.
know.
And I got outvoted.
Well, if we find another house, maybe we'll call it Sanctuary House.
Now, why St. Francis?
Why St. Francis? First of all, because of who St. Francis was. Francis was a guy in the 13th century who was a rich young guy, apparently very good looking, son of a merchant, partied a lot, probably did all kinds of things he was ashamed of later on.
Sounds like me.
Except
for the young part.
Went off to war to try to win glory and got captured and held prisoner for a year, and he came back and his life began to change. He began to spend time by himself. He began to be in silence. And then one day he was praying in this little dilapidated ruined church outside of Assisi, and there's this beautiful cross called the San Damiano cross because it was a church of San Damiano. And Jesus spoke to him through the cross and said, "Francis, rebuild my church, which, as you can see, is falling down." And Francis, being very literal-minded, went out and got some money from his daddy's. He stole money from his daddy, basically, bought some bricks, and started to rebuild this church.
Sounds more like me. He stole the money. I like that about Francis.
But then he found out that it wasn't just this little building he was supposed to rebuild, it was supposed to renew the entire church. And so people were drawn to him because he wanted to live a simple life, he wanted to be obedient to Christ, and he wanted to give up everything for the Lord, for the love of the Lord. He, as a young man, he hated lepers because they smell bad. The wounds smelled, and he couldn't stand the smell. When he got converted, he embraced the leper. That was the day for him. He saw this person whom he feared, this person whom he hated, didn't like, and said, "This is it. This is where the rubber hits the road. I've got to embrace this person." He gets down off his horse, kisses the leper, and his life has changed forever.
I like this. We're doing Bible study, and now that's going to lead me into more stuff. Okay, about the house, I want. Do you do stuff like that? Do you do like Bible study, or do you have other things where you share these kind of conversations?
Yes.
Is that going on?
Every other Friday night, we have meetings for clarification of thought that start at 5:30 with evening prayer and Bible study. At 6 o'clock, we serve the meal. I do all the cooking, or most of the cooking. Cooking is a male thing in our family. Nate and I cook, and Ann and Sarah do other things. And then after the meal, we have conversation. And the point of the conversation on clarification of thought is you don't get somebody to come and tell you the answer. You don't get somebody to come and give you a lecture. You get somebody to come and say, here's the question we're thinking about. What is prayer? You know, and you say, well, I've had this experience, and somebody else has had that experience, and then what's your experience? And just open the conversation up. The theory being, and this comes from the Catholic worker movement, that I can learn from the Bible, I can learn from books, I can learn from a talk that you give, but I can learn more by listening to what other people say and how other people hear it. And so if I gave a talk last Friday night, but I learned stuff from other people who were there, who said stuff. And so if you realize that you're a learning community, it's not one person who knows everything and everybody else listening, like pouring water in buckets, but that we're all people who want to grow, all people who have intelligence. And I see this all the time. When we do peace witnesses at the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, people say, give us a peace sign, say, you know, the war's bad, let's have peace. People figure things out. People are smart. Our governments tend not to give them credit for being very smart. Our bureaucrats tend to think they know better and treat people as clients. But in fact, left to their own devices and given half a chance, people are smarter than people give them credit for.
When you're talking about peace, which gives me a segue into my next thing, reading in your things, it says, I want to know, what is the Center for Peace and Justice? It talks about that in there. Can you give me a little bit about that?
Sure.
I mean, you're busy in a lot of things. I mean, I know because some things I'm busy with you.
That's right.
You come to our rescue several years ago, but the Peace Center and Justice thing, which I have a real problem with peace.
Well, most of the problem with peace that we have is we don't have it. But that'd be better. A few years ago, as our country was getting ready to go to war, wrongly, as I think, a number of people, including a lot of the clergy, were trying to find a way to have a public forum and to talk about these things. And we couldn't do it because there just wasn't enough agreement among all the people. And so finally, after a demonstration at the post office, a bunch of us went over to All Souls Church, one of my favorite churches. It's not a church, it's a congregation. All Souls Unitarian Universalist congregation. Went over there and sat down and said, okay, we've just got to do it. And we started having a Peace and Justice Network. Okay, and that's it, the Southeastern Connecticut Peace and Justice Network. It meets at St. Francis House because that's what we do, we host it. That's hospitality, part of our hospitality. It met last night. It does some anti-war work. It does some counter-recruiting work. We go into the high school and tell people about alternatives to the draft, alternatives to enlistment, and we did a lot of work around the mock terror attack a year ago. Many of you will remember that the Department of Homeland Security came and spent millions of dollars having exercises to prove that we were not prepared to be attacked by nameless terrorists, all of whom are force of foreigners. And so we helped to organize a resistance to that, and we had fear-free zones around the city where people could come and say, well, you know, I don't necessarily need to be afraid. I don't need to be afraid of Arabs. I don't need to be afraid of Muslims. I don't need to be afraid of somebody who looks different than me. I mean, everybody gets us confused. The bald guys with white beards, they come to me and say, hey, Father Russ. I say, no, I'm the handsome one. But the Peace Network.
I say I'm the young one.
That's it. The Peace Network is a network of people who come together and talk about what they want to do to try to make life better, to build a society, to build the new society within the shell of the old, to really just live in a different way than the way that leads to war.
What do you say to reluctant warriors like me, okay, who supported the war? I have to say, I don't run and hide behind that. And actually, I wasn't too worried about whether they had nuclear weapons or not. I look at oppression and I get very angry coming from my background and everything else, and probably believe force is the way that you can change things. And but over the years grew and obviously have children in the military and everything else, and try to teach them to be reluctant warriors. Somewhat of a student of Gandhi. And knew that Gandhi believed in a just war. Oh, and I got a call. And then I did something wrong there. Wait right there, Carl. Good evening. You're on Street Talk with Father.
Yeah, Father Jarrett,
Yes.
how long have you been doing what you've been doing with the different objectives and all that, especially fighting with City Hall and with whatever other organizations to get what needs to be done?
Well, probably it's fair to say most of my life. I grew up in the Deep South in Louisiana in the 40s and 50s. I experienced racism there where I lived, in the community that I lived in. And I read the New Testament, and it didn't seem to square with what we were doing, and so found myself resisting that. Went off to college, joined the Army, spent 3 years and 27 days in Upper San German.
See, we were talking about warriors. See
That's
that?
right. And went to Okinawa. It was my good fortune that it was after Korea and before Vietnam, so I didn't have to see any killing. But I was there on the outposts of empire. It really became clear to me that there is a military empire. There is a military industrial complex, as President Eisenhower, the famous Republican, once said.
Right.
So that was part of it. My political education began there. They were giving us security clearances, and they asked us if we supported one of the two major parties. And they said, don't tell us which one. It is your sacred right to belong to one of these two parties, but not to anything else. And there were 140 lists on the Attorney General's list of subversive organizations, including the American Civil Liberties Union, that we were supposed to not belong to. So I learned something about politics in that. Got out of the Army, went to Columbia, got involved in poetry, and was there during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and wondered, along with other people, why it was that President Kennedy was home safe in the White House and the rest of us were exposed to these nuclear weapons. And just went on with all that. I became a priest in 1976. And because I saw that the Christian radicals had more staying power than the secular radicals. The Christian radicals lasted longer, didn't blow themselves up, didn't give up and go become rich stockbrokers. And I've been trying to do it ever since. Wherever people want to live is where the struggle is. Wherever people want to have a place to be themselves, to be free, is where the struggle is. The solution to the struggle, I think, is not violence, because violence is what's got them oppressed in the first place. The solution is to live differently, to share, not to want so much.
Well, I think I got
You got another one. All right.
Yeah.
Hope that answers your question.
Good evening. You're on Street Talk.
Good evening. Father Jared, can anyone attend your Friday night meetings?
Yes.
Thank you.
Everyone's welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Bye-bye, caller. That's anybody can attend Friday nights. We've got that across. And again, okay, peace. I guess I was getting back to Gandhi. Gandhi thought World War II was a just war. In his words, that he felt that you could fight. You believe nonviolence the way. Do you see there was any contradiction between the two?
Well, what Gandhi said was that it would be better to fight than to be a coward. But he held that the person who chooses the way of nonviolence is more courageous. That the way to get real change, the way to end.
Very good, George. That was George's
That was
phone.
George's phone.
What was that?
They went out over there. Anyway, so Gandhi is one of the three great examples in the 20th century. I mean, the 20th century, the great century of secular triumph, the century of we now know how to do everything, and we've got science, and we've got money, and we've got all this sort of stuff. More people were killed in wars in the 20th century than in all the rest of them put together. The millions that were killed in World War I, and just as soon as the war was over, the Versailles Treaty set it up for World War II, so that somebody like Hitler was going to come to power in Germany and there would be another war. 20 million people in Russia were killed in World War II. the 6 million Jews were killed in Poland and Germany. Our fighting the war didn't stop any of those people being killed.
Didn't stop war.
Any of them, exactly.
No,
it
war
did not
hasn't
stop war.
stopped war.
But here's the thing. Gandhi, along with a lot of other people, secured the independence of India from the greatest empire of its time without violence. Martin Luther King secured civil rights for African Americans in our country, and we all lived through that time. We remember. I mean, I remember segregated drinking fountains, segregated schools, segregated buses, segregated everything. Those are gone. The work is not all begun. We don't have racial equality yet, but a lot has changed, and that was a nonviolent change. And the third one is South Africa, where Nelson Mandela led the people, along with Archbishop Tutu and a lot of Christians, to freedom in a primarily nonviolent way. So that's what I think. It works. Now, violence works too. It works to get more violence.
Okay, I can handle some of that. And obviously, I believe in the greatest change, nonviolent change person in the world,
Exactly.
who changed the world nonviolently and could have used his power and always confused me. When he went to the cross, he could have destroyed everybody, but he didn't for our sake, and he changed.
And doesn't that suggest that this is the way? That
Yeah.
Jesus' way.
Oh, you got yes, yes, it certainly does. It's difficult. Well, I guess Gandhi's words for me are truly. I think it does take more courage to stand up. When I did work with the American Friends Service Committee years ago, and was involved with the busing in Boston. I had the most difficult time having people throw rocks at me, okay, while I'm protecting little black children in an Irish area, and spit at me without doing violence to them. I mean, and later on in those days, we're into fights because of, I try to say defending myself, but in fact, the violent thing is very difficult to control. How people could stay and get beaten up, far more courage than I have, and everything else like that. You start to raise your hand at me, and father wants to fight, even at my age, or has that instinct. And I have to say, I look with great respect on people who do nonviolent work, and work myself to try to get to that point. Try to teach even my children. I say reluctant warrior because I totally believe that war should be the last thing that anybody does or anything else like that. And maybe. Well, clearly it isn't the answer. I got to say it hasn't solved anything any place, and that. So, but that my question. I have another question though. I don't want anyone to change the subject too much here, but your newsletter. You have a newsletter.
We do.
Okay, I have this newsletter over here. George can blank my face out again, and it's called. The newsletter is called Troubadour.
Right.
Okay, Troubadour, and I want to know, is that title significant? The Troubadour, the title.
Of course.
And an explanation can I get from
An
you?
explanation you can get. Francis called himself a troubadour.
Yeah.
Because Francis, remember, when he was born, about 1180 or 1182, his father was off in France buying cloth to bring to Italy to sell. And he was a Francophile. He was fascinated by the French. His mother named him John, and he was baptized. And his father got back and says, nope, he will be called Francis, Francisco, or Francois. And Francis grew up speaking French as well as Italian. And this was the era of the troubadours, wandering singers who wandered all over the world, all over Italy and France and Germany, singing songs, composing poems. Francis was a great poet. Francis, the Canticle of the Sun, about Brother Sun, Sister Moon, the movie and all that. Those are some of the Francis's poems. Some of the great poems of the vernacular. Just as Latin was ceasing to be the language that everybody operated in, and Italian and French and Spanish were growing up, at that moment, Francis was writing his work. And so the purpose of the troubadour is to be a place where we can sing. a place where we talk about not just all the criticisms of society, we got plenty of those, but about a vision of what a good society would be like, a vision of what it would be like if the kind of love and care that the three of us feel for each other, because you guys in the audience got to know we know each other. This is not a put-up job. Yeah. We spend a lot of time together. We do a lot of things together, and so we come to love each other. And to talk about that, rather than just about the negative things, the things that are bad that we need to work on. So the Troubadour is designed to help us try to talk about the good possibilities that we can see for life.
Yeah, and there's a lot of how do we the Troubadour? Where do people get this? I mean, I know.
Let me know. We'll mail it to you. It's free.
It's free, and and they could they can get it from where the house is, right? And,
yes.
And everything else. Very informative newsletter.
Well, there's a very excellent article by Russ Carmichael in
one of
the current issue.
Yeah. I got to plug myself,
right? That's right. There's an envelope in there. When you get it, you can always send money, because we're beggars too. We ask.
Well, isn't that Francis's tradition?
That's
Wasn't
right.
that what Francis did? All right. How do we put another thing about Francis's simple life? Father's a Benedictine, another guy, right? Benedict was more academic. Francis, which is really interesting between the two. Francis, because I'm the dummy, and over here the Benedictine, and Father's the Franciscan. But he believed in a simple life, right? He wasn't all that.
Absolutely.
He wasn't all that great about academics. Isn't that true too?
As a matter of fact, for part of his life, he was very anti-books.
Yeah.
And he was not completely literate. So we don't have much in the way of writing from him. But he sang, and he knew, and he spoke. And one of the things he said was, always preach the gospel, only use words if necessary.
Yeah.
And so his idea is that your life is the gospel. Benedict went into the country.
Excuse me. We
got
got a call.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to get back. Good evening. You're on Street Talk with two fathers tonight.
Hi.
Yeah.
Father Jerry, I got a question for you.
Yes.
I was in Father Russ's office, and I saw a poetry book in there. And I see you're one of the poets, which I read some of your poetry. It's very good. Now, how would someone go about seeing more of those? Or, like, seeing more of your poetry?
Green's Book and Beans. Green's Books and Beans has copies for sale.
Oh, they do?
Yes, they do.
Is there a
$8.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's great. Save up your lunch money, right? Yeah, that's right. You do. Yeah, that's a new book that's at Green's Books and Beans, talking about poetry, though, and which gets us right back to Francis and a singer, and even the rule. Francis wrote a simple rule, not like the one I
that's
follow,
right.
You can give us some more insight into that, right?
Well, it's really very interesting, because Benedict, just for the benefit of the audience, right. Benedict operated in the 5th century, or the 6th century AD in Italy. At the time, the so-called Dark Ages were beginning. The Roman Empire was collapsing all around them. The barbarians were coming in, and there was no stable society. City life was decaying. So Benedict and his friends moved out into the country, established monasteries, grew their own food, lived in places, and like with the Irish, saved civilization. Mm-hmm. When Francis comes along, 800 years later, city life is there again. The Benedictines tend to be off by themselves, and people go on and join them. Francis went into the cities, so Francis has an urban perspective as opposed to the anti-urbanism of the original Benedictine thing. The Bishop of Assisi offered Francis, as a matter of fact, the Benedictines gave Francis the Portiuncula, the little portion church, for his group to live in, but Francis wouldn't own anything. The Bishop of Assisi said, "Let me give you some land." He says, "No, if you give us land, we'll own it, and then we'll have to defend it, and we're not permitted to kill anybody." But he went into the cities, and the Franciscans, along with the Dominicans, were the first ones to go into the universities. The Benedictines caught on and came in too. But they were the ones who got into the universities and were teaching people in cities. They were wanderers. The Benedictines are stable. The Franciscans are always running around getting into trouble.
Yeah, and
Now, how can you be a Benedictine?
I know it.
As much trouble as you do.
As much trouble as I caused. Well, Father Lewis, who was my mentor, always said I should have been a Franciscan and not have been to get out of here, right? Which, and he was a Franciscan that turned into a Benedictine. God bless him. But talking about work and what we do and running around, there's an ecumenical urban work that you're doing, and this is what we're talking about. What is that about? That comes along with what we're talking about here, right? Urban ministry type of thing. Can you explain? I know that's in your folder.
Well, you and I have just been to England to visit the Urban Theology Unit of the University of Sheffield. Urban ministry is unpopular. People don't want to talk urban, they want to talk suburbs. Because you run from the city, you get out of where it's dangerous because all these drug people and all these violent people are here, and you go out to the suburbs where it's safe. You come into the city to make your money, you take your money, steal the money from the poor, and go out to the suburbs and live safely. I've been involved in urban ministry since day one, and all that means is I look around, I see who my neighbors are, and say, what's happening? You know, what's going on? What's God doing in your life? The model that too many churches and certainly too many agencies follow is we know what's best, we've learned, we've studied, so we will come in from our safe, secure suburban neighborhoods, and we will come in and drop down on a parachute and fix you and then rush back to our safe suburban place. My model of urban ministry is the classic Christian model. The priest lives in the parish. All of the people who live in that physical parish are the parishioners, not just the Episcopalians or the Baptists or the Catholics, but everybody who's there. And so you come in, you say, I just arrived here. I arrived in New London in 1999. God has been here a long time before that. God was here before there was a New London. God was here before there was an Old London. So my question is, what is God up to? What is God doing? And what is God inviting me to join? How is God inviting me to change? Because that's the key. Change is the key. And you don't have to go to jail. You don't have to be a drug addict. You don't have to be an alcoholic to need to change. You can be a nice, respectable, upstanding academic character. You still need to change. Because he comes and he says, what's up? And you know, he did that to me. He said, my nature is hospitality because God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. God doesn't create us because he needs company. He's got company. Mm-hmm. They've got each other. They've got a dance of divine life. God creates us because of the overflowing love that's just got to spill out, and so it makes us.
And we can share in.
And that we can share in. So our task, our need, is to be like God. That is to say, to be social. The three. Here we are, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And to learn to love each other in relationship. God is hospitable to us. And so all we have to do is be hospitable to each other. So we came here in 1999 and settled into the house at 30 Broad Street, which had been a crack house, had been a boarding house, had been all kinds of houses, and said, who's here? And looked around, and the neighbors knocked at the door. The neighbors were across the street, sitting on the wall. The neighbors were everywhere. And they told us what was going on.
And in that, you and I connected about 3 years ago in doing the homeless coalition and what I call interfaith ministry by dealing with all the people who are involved. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. But before I get there,
okay.
Transitional housing, that you have a unit. That's
yes.
Okay. What is that about? What's that traditional housing unit? Has it been occupied, and what's going on with that?
All right.
That's an interesting experimental thing. I mean, I've read, obviously I know a lot about what's going on over there, but there are some things that I'm, obviously I'm still questioning about what's going on.
Okay, here's the deal. A few years ago, someone called us up, when it was somebody that I knew from St. James Episcopal Church, which is where I go to church sometimes. And this woman called us up and said that she talked to her mother, who was a parishioner at St. James, And her mother gave us our number. And she called up and she said, I don't know what you do, but I work at York Prison, and I've got this woman who's getting out of prison day after tomorrow. And she was supposed to go to a halfway house, and that's fallen through. Can you help? And we sort of gulped and said, well. So we went out and talked to her and liked her, thought she was a good person. So we said, okay, yes, we can. And gave her a room in the house, because what is now the transitional apartment was a mess, was just trashed and unlivable. Gave her a room in the house, and she lived with us for 6 months. In the end, she left and went back to Hartford and got back into drugs and back into trouble and is back in jail. But we learned just a tremendous amount from that experience of that 6 months with this woman. One, we learned what it's like to come out of prison. I mean, I never was in prison, so I don't know what it's like to come out. But you come out and you got no money. You got the clothes on your back. All your old friends are the people you got you in trouble in the first place. You've got no job. Nobody wants to hire a felon. So what are you supposed to do? And you go back to jail. Most people, that's what recidivism is about. And she got out and she spent the time with us. We worked with her and she got training as a nurse's aide, and then she found out she couldn't do it because she had a felony.
She had a felony, right. Exactly.
But they took her money to get the training.
Yeah, but they didn't tell her what the
They didn't tell her that.
Which made
she went out and she worked at Filene's, but you last hired, you get the night shift. The buses stop in New London after 6 o'clock. She couldn't get home. So we went out and picked her up at 9 o'clock every night. But it was still too much. I mean, she just spent most of her life in prison. And she has 4 or 5 children and has very little contact.
That's a story that happens all the time.
All the time.
You know, I can start on it for all the years I've been involved with that, and the steps and the difficulty of doing that, even with assistance.
That's right.
Because you're blocked with so many things that licenses you can't get, and if you can't get a job and you got no money, you're going to do the thing that you know that you're going to get money with.
So here's the deal about the transitional housing.
Transitional housing.
We figured we failed with this person.
Well, I don't. Okay.
No, we didn't. She's back in jail.
She's back in
it's a
jail.
failure. But we learned a lot.
Right.
One of the things we learned was we're not social workers. We're not people. We're not the people who are going to have her have urine tests and have her go to meetings and have her go to programs and have her go to this, that, which obviously she needs to do. We're good at being neighbors. We're good at being friends and sharing our lives with people. So we figured, okay, here's the deal. We'll get the money, and the Palmer Fund a year ago gave us $20,000 to renovate this apartment, which we've done. And it has been used for one person who came to us fairly quickly, actually, because she was busy having a baby. And if she didn't have a place to live, by the time she was ready to leave the hospital, the Department of Children and Families would take her child. So they didn't take her child. She came and lived with us in this apartment. She has a social worker, so we have a relationship with a social service agency that will do that kind of stuff that needs to be done, but that we're not either trained to do or called to do. And we get to befriend the people and spend time with them. And so it's there for 6 months to up to 2 years. And we're going to see somebody on Thursday to come and be the next person.
And you had one person step out and move on.
That's right.
A
And
success.
so now that's success.
You're doing 50%, which is better.
That's right.
As far as father goes. Yeah, because most agents get about an 80% failing rate,
Right.
and most of them don't do the job, and you go back in anyways. That's over 5 years, by the way, and Father does know the statistics about people who come out and rehab places that say they get 60% or 80%. They don't have it. You take over 5 years, you go back. Father's been in that a long, long time and been successful with people who've worked their way out. Delancey Street in San Francisco is one of the most probably one of the best in the country for rehabbing people, and founded by felons themselves, ex-offenders, self-help. I'm a big believer in that. So I like to make sure my audience knows that that's where my head's at.
Good stuff.
And now I do want to get back to, that was the transitional housing. Your work is vital to what I do, okay, in the homeless thing. You came to me when I was throwing rocks at people and everything else like that. I started with half a dozen. Most people that have tuned into my show know I started with about a half a dozen homeless people in the park. Myself in a situation, temporarily homeless at the time and under great stress, threw some rocks, and you come down and see me, and we got together, right?
That's right. But we go way back, even though we didn't know it, because one of Father Russ's close friends in Boston is one of my best friends in the whole world. So that's a connection we have. But no.
Nope. We got a call.
A call.
There
We'll
we
take
go. Good evening. You're on Street Talk with Father Russ.
Yes, I have a question for Father Emmett.
Yes?
I understand that when they got the two houses they have currently, that they were in dire need of work, and I was wondering how he went about getting the work done. What did he do? Was it a pull of his community, or?
Oh, how they repap the houses?
Yeah.
Oh, how they were trying to find out how you went about rehabbing those houses.
Okay, well, two houses. One is 30 Broad Street, St. Francis House, and that that was the one we learned on. And Anne, my wife, acted the role of sort of general contractor to get the heating system fixed so that it works now, to get the water system fixed, to get the electrical system fixed, to get all those things fixed. We, with our hands, cleaned out the place. I knew in the summer of 1999, when we got there and unloaded all of our worldly goods and began to scrub and clean the floors, the smell reminded me of the Lower East Side of New York in 1963. And so I said, well, I can live with this. I've done this before. And so we did that. We had Yankee Remodeler put the what's the word? The things that extend out of the roof. We had to put a new roof on.
Dormers.
The dormers. Yeah, put the dormers up so that Ann and Nate and Sarah and I live on the third floor, which was the attic. It was the place had 9 rooms. There were 9 different electric meters. And when it was a rooming house and a crack house, that's the way it worked.
Oh, okay.
And so we just turned this back into a house.
Okay.
So that's the place that we live and the place that we work. The chapel's on the first floor, the library's on the first floor, the kitchen and the dining room where we eat with people. On the second floor are offices and guest rooms, and the third floor is us. The house next door, we learned our lesson, and Anne was not about to be a contractor again. And we were lucky because this wonderful, wonderful young man named Arthur Lerner, who subsequently went on to establish Fresh New London, which is a wonderful project.
Right.
Arthur is a farmer, married to Emily, and they were about to have their first baby, or just had their first baby, Eleonora. And Arthur needed a job, and so we hired him, and he just did it out of sheer love and some money. He had to live. And then this wonderful guy from Waterford named Ted Olencio, who's now on the coalition to work.
Of course, I know Arthur too, that helped us put the roof on helped us out of love last summer.
So the second house, Victory House, was this wonderful old house. We looked at it when we first bought the first one, and we thought, oh, if we just had lots and lots of money, we could fix it up and live like rich people. It had never been cut up into rooms, but was still like a single-family dwelling that it was built as. And so now that house has on the first floor the office and the meeting room where all of our meetings are held. And then an apartment where Mark lives, because Mark can't go up and downstairs very much because of his oxygen situation. And then on the second floor, there are 2 apartments, and on the third floor, what was the pool room in the old mansion is another apartment. And so we had, in the fall, we had George Rishmari, a Palestinian Arab, a Christian Arab Palestinian, who was selling olive wood in the mall.
Carvings, yes.
Carvings. Beautiful stuff.
And
you helped him get a car.
Yeah, I helped him get a car. And
now this is a man with cars.
Yeah, I helped. Yeah. Well, I got the best car guy in the whole Jimmy Polizzi, I love you.
All right.
He keeps 2 for 1. I love you, Jimmy. Yeah, he keeps us running with cars. But yes, we met and they do those carvings and everything else. We have a few at our office, in fact.
Now there is an example of peacemakers. Those guys are Christian Arab Palestinians. They live in the occupied territories. They live in Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. And they have they live in an occupied country. And so they are in the midst of that terrible struggle between Palestine and Israel, where nobody wins. But they're peacemakers. They are nonviolent people. They are committed to sharing the land with Jews and Arabs and everybody learning to live together. And they work at that. So talk about courage. It takes courage in an occupied country to live as a peacemaker.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were a peacemaker when I came. That gets me a segue into, you were a peacemaker for me as I attacked everybody. And we got together in those early days, and maybe you can explain what's going on, where we are with shelter stuff here. There's been different things in the paper.
Oh, boy.
And your help and your activity has been of immense support to our group, which is a grassroots group. We're the struggling
That's for sure.
group, and
Well, where things have been and where things are. Let's do a little history. 6 years ago, or is it 7, when the city started doing this? 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years ago.
7 years ago. This is the 7th year. 7 years ago, the homeless people slept in the lobby of the police department, if anywhere, or on the street, or in tents, or wherever, or froze to death. And the city, with the social services department, Pamela Kilby-Fox was in charge of health and human services. Pat Serluka and Marie Gravel were the 2 social workers, the social work part. The city would each winter for 3 months, January, February, and March, would get a house that NLDC had and was going to destroy or remodel or something later on. They'd let them have it free, and they'd do what needed so it could be used. And they hired the Salvation Army. They contracted with the Salvation Army to run the shelter. They couldn't start until January 1st because the Salvation Army was doing their bell ringing in December. And that's before we met, but that's at the point at which I began to think, this is not smart. It gets cold in New England before January the 1st.
Absolutely.
So we started in the Clergy Association to say, now how can we do something? Can't we find a way to open up the churches to have places for people for December? And we started doing that. The following year, and this was in response in many ways to the Homeless Coalition's existence, the city didn't use a house, but got Pastor David Cornish's church. Give a plug for Pastor Cornish, the fire baptized Mount Moriah Fire Baptized Holiness Church, 22 Moore Avenue, New London. Pastor Cornish let us use the parish hall, the common room, the community room of his church. We had 26 cots, and Father Russ and the Homeless Coalition and I and the Clergy Association and First Step partnered with the city to do all this work, and we did it. And we realized that we needed more, and also we realized we needed something permanent, something year-round. Then, just as we were about to start working on this, the city, in its wisdom, eliminated the social services department, privatized the health department, and there was nobody to run the shelter. Sound Community Services, the successor to First Step, offered to administer it, and the offer was accepted. We tried to get the city to change its budget, but in its wisdom, the city leaders preferred to save $150,000. They've now learned, I hope, that it cost a lot more than $150,000 to do the work that those 2 women did.
Oh, I know.
But there you are. So Sound did it this year, and it became clear to us, Father Russ and me, and Father Belt of St. James, where the shelter is this year, and George, who's running it, and helping to manage the shelter day to day, that sound wasn't going to be able to do that forever. It was also clear that we needed to do it, and we still need to do it year-round. So in January, after we narrowly escaped being shut down by the city, we got a group of people together and started working on a project, and we've come up with a plan to have a permanent year-round shelter for 50 people with a day drop-in center, so people don't have to go to the railroad station to get warm, and with showers and with services and with the kind of advocacy and training that Father Russ and the Homeless Coalition provide. The Homeless Coalition is the heart of this plan, because the idea of people's self-determination of how they want to live their lives, how they want to change, how they want to grow, that these guys know how to do, and on a one-to-one basis. It's very intensive. It is not something, you don't get a bunch of clients and dole out a bunch of cards. No. You work one-on-one for years with people. And so that's the plan. And we've come up with a consensus document that lots of people in the community agree to. Now we just got to find the place, raise the money, and we're sure that the City of New London, in its wisdom, will want to do the right thing and provide generously for its neediest citizens in the future.
One of the things that was just, just recently, the work is intensive. It's intense work and everything else like that. And a great group of people. Next week, I'm going to have the Director of Social Services here, which you know, Beverly.
Yes, indeed.
She knows definitely what the problem is, and obviously been here a long time and knows the numbers and what's going on and everything else like that.
Norwich still has a Department of Social Services.
Norwich still does have a
$500,000 budget.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yes. And in their wisdom.
So Norwich is the step ahead of New London in some ways.
In some ways, yes. In some ways, in addressing the problem. The problem is immense, though. We have an immense problem here going on, and the shelter is really a step.
Right.
I guess we really need to emphasize that it's just a step. The key to ending this is putting people in their own places. And they've done studies that that's where the individuals need to be. They need their own, as I refer to it, is their own cave. They don't need to have a $500,000 house on the beach. They need a place where they can call home with a mailbox and a phone so that you can get that stuff up. Obviously, there's a lot of other work that goes in and gets involved with that, but that's really where the bottom line is with this. I just want to, I'm almost ready to wrap up here. We've had a great night talking about St. Francis House. I'm so glad that you were on the show with me.
Thank you.
And George always. I mean, George is over there running the shelter and going to
Marlon Brando.
And got to run back there tonight and work with all our people that are out there. I do want to plug the Troubadour. I don't know if we not the Troubadour, Father's poetry book. It's not that this is a great book. Yeah, this right oh, there it is.
Hey,
they
there
have
it is.
on there.
Hey,
Yeah.
how'd they do that?
Wild Goose Flying South.
down
Lost my
at
job,
Books and
all the
Read,
paper
it's wonderful. It's a wonderful book, my New London favorite poet, and George Clark is my New London favorite artist. Father is obviously a little biased there, but that's the way things are. I want to say thank you to my audience, and we're gonna go out of here and probably end this show. And please, next week, I have George over here fooling around. Okay, with I guess I want to say good night.
Watch out for that.
And I want you, please come back next week with your questions and everything else. We have a lot of good things coming up.